Last few months, we have been following all the social distancing practices and the stay home orders in order to avoid the threat of the coronavirus from each one of us getting it or spreading the virus. Now that the businesses are opening and we are going back to work, does that mean that we not follow any of these social distancing practices and going back to our same old routine? Hello, I am Rajitha Bommakanti, registered nurse, faith-based holistic coach, and founder of Healthy You Lifestyle Center. In order to develop healthy habits for life, one step at a time, click the red subscribe button and the bell icon now. Now that we are going back to our routine, what are we supposed to continue doing? And is this COVID-19 threat still a threat for us where we need to continue following these precautions? Join me in listening to Dr. Parik Pilly. He is an internist practicing in New York City, and he has treated many of the COVID-19 patients and seen the good, bad, and the ugly side of the COVID-19.
Thank you for taking time and explaining to us today. I just wanted to talk to you since you're in New York area. That's where the ground zero. We hear all this newscasts.
Sure.
Let me start off by asking, what interested you to go into, as an ER physician? I think you do some inpatient too.
Right. So I again, it's so funny. As I said, I'm more of I'm an internal medicine doctor, hospitalist, nocturnist, but like I work a lot in the ER because I do admissions, right? I have to overnight. We do cross coverage of like medical services, follow-ups, patient crashing. We make sure we're there, but then we also do new admissions. So I end up going into the ER and seeing the patients right then and there. So, for me, they say I'm honorary ER because all my good friends are ER, because at nighttime, that's who I pretty much commiserate with and consult, talk with, and a lot of good friends of mine. So we started seeing, that's what I love doing. I think night lets me do the internal medicine aspect of it more than the social. Nothing against social work. God bless you all, case managers and everybody, PTOT. I know that. I did residency. I understand, but I've been able to find my niche in the sense that I love nights. I'm able to do kind of medicine, things and kind of emergency medicine in a way, kind of hybrid. So,
Good.
Yeah.
When did you start seeing patients with COVID? In the beginning, we did not know much about it until in March timeframe,
Right.
but it's been going on for some time.
It's interesting. I think we had been anticipating it, our epidemiologists and like infectious disease, I think the first week of March or so, because I think our first case was probably March 1st, I think in New York City. I don't know if it was at Columbia or Mount Sinai, one of the health systems, but we started, I think, it was knowing then we were using we didn't know. We were just like, let's brace ourselves. And we started seeing a lot of the travel history people kind of have it, right? Exposure. Oh, you were in Italy. I think we had a lot of Italians or kind of people who were traveling there. I think our first, he had been discharged, actually, it was admitted on March 7th. And I think he was discharged like in the last week or so. He had been in the hospital for that long. He had traveled to Spain. I think he had got exposure to somebody who was an asymptomatic carrier. Then he traveled to Chile, where he's from originally, and then he came to New York City, and then he started having symptoms and got hospitalized. I think he was hospitalized on March 7th, and I think he was discharged not this week, but the last week. He had been that in the year. Yeah.
That was a long hospitalization.
It's incredible, like what people have gone through and the journey they've had, and what I've seen. The whole wide spectrum. And actually, one of the things we've been doing is play Here Comes the Sun. When we, overhead, when we discharge somebody with COVID, Here Comes the Sun, like kind of an uplifting kind of thing. So it's a nice, morale boost. And we're not doing all this for, it's not hopeless.
Yeah, they are getting better into getting discharged. Like in the beginning, did you all think it was more of a flu symptoms, or is that what?
Well, by the time, I think We had a really bad flu season, and we'll all tell you, I've been here for many years, and we always expected, we anticipated it, flu season, winter season, whatever. We see a lot of more cases, but this one was definitely extraordinary. Like, it was definitely something we didn't realize what it was, but and as I had been telling other people, like, we were getting flu swab negatives, right? We're like, God, they look like atypical pneumonia, viral pneumonia. They look like flu, but it's coming back flu negative. So that's something now we look back in hindsight, we realize, oh my God, there was probably COVIDs back even December, November that we didn't realize, at that time, because we didn't really know. No one really understood it then even.
Yeah.
I don't think it was till early December was the first person that kind of raised alarm bells in China, at least. A doctor there had. So it was tough. We were giving antibiotics because we thought, okay, give antibiotics, superimpose bacterial pneumonia. Viral pneumonia, we really don't have much unless we give Tamiflu. Viruses are more tough to treat. We don't really treat them per se in that sense, in an inpatient setting.
Yeah. So was it challenging? I know since you do nocturnal, was it challenging to discharge these patients, during the daytime crew? Because especially the ones that do come from rehab centers going back, because they might not want to accept them. Well, that's the case manager's challenge.
I mean, before this all became very universal, that we now all know it's part of our daily life, I think back in like January, December, that this wasn't known, right? So there was no problem, but we were having, our census counts were going through the roof. Like, it was just, people were staying, it was just, we had such an influx of people, but we thought, okay, it's a worse flu season than it was the previous year. So we thought flu was really bad this year. What's going on? So, but now, obviously, it's definitely a thing. And I think New York State, I think this is a kind of a controversial issue, but like Governor Cuomo was asked this question, and like about his policy of like, the nursing homes, people couldn't deny those people being discharged, right? If they were discharged and ready to go, recovered, right? I said, and that's nice. I've been telling them, these people have to be watched much longer, and they need to go to separate facilities themselves, because as I have been warning my leadership, or at some point, it was like, you can't mix COVID with non-COVID patients. You just can't. It's just you're just asking for it. And we did see patients that were here admitted for something else come back 2 weeks later while this was going on, and they have COVID now. Because they probably got in the circulating, because closed ventilation spaces, rooms, as you said, we're talking about before, negative pressure ventilations, you need that because this thing sits in the air also in closed spaces. It's not like impregnating the air if you're out in the air, outside, maybe a wind will carry, but when you're in that closed space, trains, subways, mass transport, buses, airplanes, that closed circulation, boom, hotels, it's going to hit you. The exposure happens, over time, right? Enough time and exposure, boom, you hit that viral load, you get infected.
Wow. So were you using negative pressure rooms for your patients?
Yeah.
All of your positives.
Well, the initial census in the first week of March, we had enough rooms, right? We had enough. Yeah. So it was slowly coming. So we knew that it was going on that rise, right? Like that you see the graph. So that's when we had to anticipate, and we started going all the elective surgeries, all this stuff. They started retrofitting PACUs into ICU units. They started like mobilizing. Pretty much, we became a COVID hospital, right? Like all our floors, like a 14th floor was like endemic. We sealed it off, because I kept telling them, you have to make all COVID. You can't cohort these patients into non-COVID and COVID right next door. And unfortunately, I said, like the nurses are going to have to, you can't put the PPE on that you need for COVID and then take it off and then run over here. You're going to, the efficiency is gone. You're wasting all this PPE because you're just like, you can't. And then you're asking them to do so much more, and then you're putting them at risk. So if you put COVID only or facilities, they can wear the PPE they need to, which is like spacesuits, basically, full hazmat suits, goggles, shoe covers. And the protocols you have to run, you have to be strict. Somebody has to observe you putting it on, putting it off. Here, everyone's just like, like, I mean, God bless them, but it's also creating self-contamination. You're probably going to take it home. You're giving it to your families. unknowingly, innocently, and inadvertently, but like it's clear what's happening. Even first responders, I feel bad for them. Like the EMS, the police, they're working the best. They're the essential workers. They're doing what we take for granted, right? Social contracts, civil society. But we need to protect them. We need to obviously protect ourselves. But the best way we can do that is have these facilities. I've been really just drumming, like create these retrofit old facilities or start building something, like we have the time. We're at a plateau. We're not through this yet. The peak hasn't happened yet for us, US.
Wow. Wow. So the first responders, whenever they get called, are they wearing the whole PPE when they go? Because they don't know what they're walking into.
Yeah. So that for them, it's going to have to be, and this is, they need to do it, but they need to wear at least this, need to wear goggles, gloves, the best that they can do, right, within the feasibility. For us as hospital healthcare workers, this is what we are primed for, right? This is what we've trained for. We understand to do these things. Asking a policeman, asking a fireman, these are tough things for them to do, right? So for them, we can protect as best we can. Grocery workers, and this is where social distancing and shelter at home helps, right? Society helps. When people are told you have to stay home and not sit there and meander around, it helps those people in grocery stores, in fire department. It helps those people to minimize their exposure. But for us as healthcare workers, we need to wear that full gear and to maximize efficiency. So we are giving those people proper treatment and at the same time not contaminating ourselves and then going to others and spreading it unknowingly.
Wow. That is true. That's what brings this to me asking you. There are some people that's protesting out there about this social distancing. What do you have to say about that? Are
So
they innocent? They don't know what's going on, or
I think it just shows you. I think there's a great Netflix documentary. It's interesting. It shows you Western ideology versus, say, an Eastern ideology in the sense the American Factory was a Netflix. It won the documentary thing. It shows you these two different thought processes. We live in the Western society, which is individual liberty, freedom. These are bedrocks, right? Like whereas Chinese, or just even the culture, it's family, group, communitarian. So they're able to listen for the greater good, and now we're being challenged in that way. It's like, yes, you have our freedom, but this virus loves us to be social, loves us to have our freedoms and go out and do and interact, which is, we love that. That was a luxury that we enjoyed. But I understand where they're coming from, but it's not helping the cause. And I think if they're educated and understand why this needs to be done in this way, we're not trying to restrict rights. We're trying to preserve something, because if this gets more spread and mutation, it's just going to be much worse, because as the virulence increases in the random chance of life and the mutations, it's going to be more worse for all demographics, not just old, not just immunocompromised. I think that was the initial, oh, this is an old person's disease. No, we're now seeing children being affected, young people are affected. I mean, people may not see it. So with the incubation period time being almost up to a month and sometimes 3 months, that has that lag time, right? So they need to realize, I've been saying you have to do at least 3 months minimum. So from mid-March, I think is when things shut down for most people. I thought to mid-June was, the minimum we need to do. I would say even go taking to August, where we do complete lockdowns, have essential services running. I understand the economic pressures. I understand people want to do things, but if you don't have public health or confidence in public health, you can open up all the restaurants you want. No one's going to have the confidence to go there. So you're not going to have an economy anyway. We're based on the virus. We're beholden to the virus. To solve that issue, then you'll have your economy. Then you can have the economy open again. We're going to have a problem now. It's coming. The second wave is here. It's going to be coming soon.
yeah, as you said, if we don't have our health in check, what good is it, no matter what you own, what you have,
Yeah.
if you are not healthy enough, because that's what we are accustomed to. Like you're saying, our freedom, our luxuries, we are all Americans. We want that instant gratification. We want that
Absolutely.
luxury.
It's
I was listening to, being from India, there, the lockdown is so strict
okay.
over there. It seems when people go out, there is police manning them.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wait. Well, India is the biggest democracy, right? It's technically the
Yes,
biggest democracy. So
but
that's incredible.
yeah. And then it's
Wow.
hard to contain over there because
So
the
many people.
it's so crowded, and
So many
in
people.
one house so many people live, so it's even more challenging for them.
I can't imagine how Prime Minister Modi and them were doing it. And you think about India, it's like, you know, you say Indians, but it's also a blanket statement because each state in itself is its own people,
Yes.
culture. And I mean, for being from, I was born in India too, but I always say the Andhra, but now they even split, right? And what,
Yes.
6 years ago or so, Telangana, it's like city folk
Yeah,
versus like the farm folk, like it's kind of almost in microcosm of what happens here, right? Rural versus city and urban and the mindsets. It's tough to control. I can't imagine how it's happening. And you're correct, but that's the best weapon, right? If we can tell you social distancing is helping us, that's the hardest part. And I think that's the dilemma. It's like it's hard for tell people like nothing's happening, but that's why it's nothing's happening because you're socially distancing, right? Like
interesting.
that's the whole. It's a catch-22. How do you explain that to people and say, hey, you actually are helping us by not interacting randomly with other people? It's helping us long term.
That's true. But, as you were saying, we are so used to going out and all that. I live in Georgia, and as soon as it got opened up, even though the takeouts are there, people were craving, they need to go to a restaurant, they need to sit down, they need to go to a salon, get their manicure, pedicure done. Um, yeah, it's like it's crazy. They're like, oh, that's okay, we all, we put the mask on, we washed hands. What do you say? They're still not understanding, and some of these people do work in a healthcare. It's
Yeah.
not like they have not been exposed to, they don't know what
Yeah.
we're talking about. Is that ignorance, or you're trying to push that aside, or what?
No, I think it's as you said. Like I don't think it's ignorance. I think it's. I kept saying this early on with my family and friends. I said it's a normalcy bias, right? You have a bias to normalcy. You want that. Like you just want it. It's just you're so ingrained, and this is fine. I've lived my life, but something like a pandemic, something that's unprecedented, right? Like this is like even Spanish flu, right? 100 years ago. I think this is like even worse than that, right? Like, and it can't rationalize it. It's hard to think that we're living in a movie. It's a movie that's a reality for us. And so to be asked those things, to have that discipline, it's an incredible ask. And as you said, like instant gratification, we want it now, right? Like when I grow up, you had to go look up an encyclopedia, look at a dictionary, you got to figure out like, it takes time. Here, everything is like right here, and you're just like, there was a scroll culture. It's like, seamless. You don't talk to anybody, you don't talk and make eye contact. The food just comes. It just shows up to you. So, food stock, you go to a grocery store, Target store, those things are not magically appearing there. There's such a supply chain. There's so many things that we're now understanding of what we take for granted in life. I think it's hard for people to look at that picture. And I think it takes a massive education, and luckily with internet, using social media, what can be used for good, you can reach more people, and people are slowly trying to get ideas and understanding of what's going on. But at the same time, there's also videos that go out that people start saying, hey, what was, there's also some myths that are created, and it's a tough situation, a catch-22. I think
Yeah.
that's the best way to kind of describe it.
I know, to another extreme, some people are having COVID parties. They're like, okay, come on, let me have the virus and I'll be immune to it.
Yeah.
What kind of a psychology is that?
So that's hoping, the herd immunity. I think that's what people have been taught, right? If you get immunity, the virus stays. But like viruses, again, something we take for granted. EBV, these are things that we all have. Most people you test for EBV, it's Epstein-Barr virus, right? We all have it. Like we probably have it and it just lives there. So, but with COVID or coronavirus, this novel one, it's novel, and it's the way it's working. It's just the way it's reacting with our body. Our bodies are not used to it. Like a majority of the population, the entire world, like 8 billion, however many people there, we just don't know and how it reacts with us. So this thing where you think you can get immunity, we're not seeing that necessarily. Some people may have some latent immunity, but they can get reinfected again. One, they can have where it looks like they have recovered, but it's a false recovery. They can stay latent. It's like the virus kind of just hangs low, and it could probably reactivate in some way, or not reactivate, but like kind of present in a different way if something else comes in and triggers it, or whatever it may be. And so I think that people just don't understand why, basically having antibodies, they could, even the antibody testing is not enough. It's just, we're not sure what it really means. We're just so fresh with this. It's not something, because you have to understand a lot of the viruses that we have vaccines or understanding or screening tests, that's years. I mean, look at HIV and when it was in early 80s, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, right? So, no one's going to get HIV like, oh, let's go get HIV right off the bat, like get immunity. Like, it's not the way it works, right? It's kind of in our head that we get immunity, but I think those parties are just bad news, because you're just giving the virus more time to mutate, proliferate, and then become more virulent on some chance. And then that makes it harder for our vaccines that's still a year and a half away at best, to have a good vaccine that's reliable, safe, and effective. So it doesn't help us.
So how about for those, that are getting antibody tested? So since they are already exposed, do they still need to follow social distancing?
Yeah.
Because they could be still be giving it to others, even though they are not having the symptoms?
That's the thing. We still don't have enough studies to show exactly. Like I was mentioning that, like, people are still get it. I mean, the nursing home situation, the tragic situations that's happening in the nursing homes where these patients are being discharged and being put in there, gives you some sort of, logical, is there a correlation, causation? Is there something like, why is this happening? Because I think they're not fully recovering, or if they recovered, they are still shedding virus in some amount. So being in that closed space, it's still giving it off. You have antibodies, you think you're good. So that's early on, everyone's like testing, but I was like, our testing is not accurate. The antibody test doesn't really tell you. And what my fear was that people get the mentality, oh, I have the, what was it, the antibody passports that we're going to give, or, immunity passports where you can go to this place, you can go back to work. Bad news, because it's giving the mentality that you're good. It's not. I don't think we're not seeing that it confers immunity all the time. It could maybe have a little bit of immunity, maybe a week, 2 weeks, a month, couple of months. Who knows? We're not clear on that. That's why we're like, you need to continue social distancing, shelter in place, minimize contact. Just don't take that chance right now, because we don't know exactly what's happening with it. I think, again, that's the hard part with this. And coronavirus is just a very unique virus.
As you said, with the testing, some are not accurate. Like in some states, where they're not seeing so many cases. I've had one client of mine who was in a different state, who went to the hospital for shortness of breath, and they gave nebulizers, was fine, was about to be discharged, dropped the sats really fast, was intubated, tested negative. After they got extubated, after a few days, got sent home. So do you think that was like a false negative, or did they test or too early, or the testing was done properly or not? Because isn't there a specific way of how to really swab?
Yeah. So there's it's called operator error, right? Sometimes to get in, it's very difficult. Sometimes you have human error. Sometimes these testing false negatives. The false negative rates can be up to 30% in some places. And I've had patients that had what we call now classic COVID in the ICU and testing until we did even a lavage of the lung, to get the fluid out of the lung. It wasn't testing positive. So it's like, we use the test. If it's positive, then we're like, okay, it tells us something. But like, it's tough because, one, if the truth of this thing is that the testing's tough, the incubation period is not 2 weeks, or what they say up to 2 weeks. It's up to 4 weeks or up to 3 months in certain cases. Up that time span. You're saying that people are not seeing cases. Oh, we're good. There's a time lag, right? If they're not showing symptoms and then asymptomatic spread, that's a big problem, because they're able to, right? It's not like the flu, right? Italy thought it was like the flu. They're like, oh, it's flu. They're all hanging out together. It's just a flu. If that person has symptoms, we just stay away from them. Here, we don't have that luxury, right? We don't know. I could be talking to you, and the simple transmission of not just cough or sneeze, where you can just breathing in close proximity to each other, either it gets onto your face or your body, or you're talking, you're inhaling it, right? If you see the physics of actually speaking, we have breath droplets,
Yeah.
micro droplets, but they're still happening, and even through our nose and everything. So that's the insidiousness of this, right? We just don't. This is incredible in that scope, right? Like, so I think that's the tough part. I think testing is important. It is. Once we get really rock solid proof testing, test everyone you can, isolate, contact, trace, do all those public health measures, and we'll get there. But again, the best thing I keep saying: social distance, complete lockdowns, essential services should run. A lot of these businesses shouldn't be open. The hair, nail salons, recipe for disaster. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, a best friend. I said, watch out for the hair and nail salons. Sure enough, on CNN that night, first community spread in California from a hair nail salon.
Wow.
I mean,
so we all should pretend like we have it, the virus, and
that's what I've been doing.
That's the way we can avoid from getting it or spreading it to others unknowingly. As long as we have that notion, make sure thinking that you have the virus, that's the only mentality you
Right.
have to have so that you can practice all the
Absolutely.
social distancing.
That's the key. It's the discipline, right? Again, it comes down to us. It comes down to the individual making that greater choice or sacrifice for the common good, right? Community. Again, that east-west divide kind of thing where, I want, where it's them, it's like we want. What can we do? We do. So it is a tough dilemma. We're being tested in our freedoms and liberties and individual rights and such like that. But like for the greater good, for the public health, what do we do? So we have to make that sacrifice. I think that's the key. I think people have to realize that, those are the things. Complete lockdowns. The economy will be there. I know it's hard. I've donated to food banks. I've tried to help out. We need We need to help people. We need to help. Look at all the people. Really, you look at life. You say, do we really need all this money? Like at the end of the day, like the billionaires even. I mean, I don't begrudge anybody getting wealth. I work hard for myself. I live in New York City. I mean, I get taxed a lot, but like at the end of the day, I'm comfortable. I'm able to live. If people can have food or the necessities, right? The simple things in life, family, food, folks, and fun, right? Like McDonald's or whatever they used to say.
Yeah.
Those are the simple things, right? So I think if we can all collectively do that and help each other, I understand the economic pressures. I don't discount that. But at the end of the day, if you don't have public health, there's no confidence, no consumer confidence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because if we don't have our health, what are we going to do?
Why are we going to take that risk?
We can't do that.
We're not going to take that risk. Who wants to die? It's like, oh, you can get COVID when you go? I'm not going to go. Like, why? So that's the hard part. I think that we need to figure out and just inculcate that into people's heads.
Yeah. Hasn't this been affecting some more than the other? Is it due to some of the comorbids that they do have, diabetics and obese? Where
Right.
are these people need to be more careful?
So that was the thought process, right? Like the older people above 60, 65 stay home, immunosuppressed stay home. And what we're understanding and what we've come to understand is that there's high inflammatory states, right? This creates a high inflammatory state. So it goes into overdrive, right? So if you're already baseline, your inflammatory state is high, say in a obese, diabetic, metabolic syndrome, they're already kind of inflammatory and they're almost already immunosuppressed in a way, right? We call it like a natural immunosuppression. Or if you have cancer, unfortunately, or HIV, of course, and like people who are transplant, medicine, they have to take immunosuppressive drugs. We saw that this thing like targeted those people like obesity, diabetics, like high blood pressure, kidney failure, disease, like this stuff that they're already there. So the tipping point for them was already low threshold for them to go into that. So we did see that, absolutely. But we're now starting to see where even people in this, I don't want to say second wave, but we're seeing this now, that they could have relatively strong immune systems compared to the first wave, so to speak, of people who unfortunately passed in that. So I think the myth there is that this is an old person's disease or like people who are immunosuppressed or most vulnerable. No, I think we're seeing people who are pretty healthy, relatively healthy, that are now being targeted, and that you don't take that for granted. I think people are missing that. I think that's also a big miss in general public health information. I think people need to know that you can get affected. I mean, children are being affected now, and it's affecting all all age groups, all demographics, races, whatever you want to call it. And so people need to realize that they can't get away with it. You have to do this. Nutritious diet, exercise is good. These are good. Good metabolism is a key to good immune system. But at the same time, you have to minimize contact because you lessen risk exposure, and then you keep your immune system strong. God forbid something happens, you get it.
But immune system, are we going to enhance our immune system just overnight after a couple of days taking all these immune boosters and all? It takes time, right, to build it
Right.
up. And
So I've been doing it. I've been cooking fresh food. I cook one fresh food meal a day. I got HelloFresh. I'm not endorsing anything, but it's been great. My parents think it's the end of the world because I've never cooked in my life before, but I've learned. It's in my family, and it's my grandmother, my dad's mom was a really great cook, so it's there. I have a little bit of genetics there for it. But with the food, exercise, a mentality too is very important. A good positive mindset is giving self hope, and that also affects the immune system too. There's a thing called psychoneuroimmunology or immunobiology, where your psyche also affects your physiology and your immune system. They do see this, so that's important, right? And the vitamin D and all that stuff, but also staying away from poor unhealthy habits like processed foods. Stay away from sugar, added sugar. I still have sugar, but added sugar is the key, right? Like they add so much sugar to so much foods. Alcohol, which is fine, you can have a little bit, but people tend to drink. We saw a lot of alcoholics obviously get really bad news with COVID. And I think just understanding that the way this thing works is that the inflammatory state, it's a vasculitis of some sort or inflammatory disorder of vascular walls that creates that situation where you get these microclots, and then it goes and affects so many different part of your organ systems, right? And then you have the oxygen deficits and such. So keeping that inflammation state down is the key. And that's what happens with good exercise, healthy meals, balance of vegetables and meats. Obviously you're vegetarian, you're already not eating a lot of vegetables to begin with, so it's fine. But get your vitamin D, B12. I mean, I've been taking supplements. Vitamin C, I take regularly. I take almost up to 5 grams a day. Actually, I have so much. I take spaced apart, but I take like 1 gram almost every couple hours. I keep taking it. I mean, I have to. I'm on the front lines. I can't take any chances. I know, unlike other people who are able to, stay away in that sense, but still take it. Vitamin C is excellent. Vitamin A, E, D. I mean, I can go through all of them. Vitamin K. I've learned a lot. As doctors, we don't get as much nutrition, which is a shame. But I'll be honest, coming from an Indian background too, I'm very much into Ayurveda, and the food and diet and the metabolism, the gut digestion is so key. I never liked yogurt. My parents love yogurt. I never ate yogurt. Now I understand why. I have something called kefir, Kefir, which is like a yogurt drink, and I drink it straight out of the bottle. Like I have bottles. I drink it daily.
Wow.
So because it has that gamma interferon within, because of the bacteria, and bacteria are actually good. There's probiotics, right? Bacteria is so essential for a good metabolism, and a good metabolism is good for good immune system. Bacteria can be our friends, actually.
Yeah.
I think that's a common misconception that all bacteria, there are bad bacteria, but very few compared to the millions. Even a biofilm, we use so much soap and all that. We're actually removing some good bacteria that are on our skin. We should do that. Good hand hygiene is key. But I have people who are going so overboard, they're like getting bleeding. They're bleeding. It's unfortunate, but anyway.
Yeah, especially now that, working in the healthcare system, the amount of hand washing you do, your skin cracks and
it's drying. The alcohol sanitizer, the alcohol component, which is important, but I think natural soap and water is best. And obviously it's hard to get that, but try to get to that, or alcohol, I think is 60 to 70% should be of the hand sanitizer. So it's good practice. I do that now. It's like religious for me now, where it's a protocol, again, strict protocols that we need to run. And as being healthcare workers, we're in that situation, right? We already have a little bit of training in that, and the mindset that you have to do that. Infection control, it's a natural part of working in the hospitals or in the outpatient practice in general. So yeah, absolutely.
How has the morale been with the, in your hospital with the healthcare workers when you see so many cases and some loss and families cannot come in and see them during their end stages? That's hard.
That's hard. I think when we sign up for this, people realize it. I give a lot of respect to the ER people, and that's why they're like a lot of, I count them as family and friends. And even though I wasn't technically working in the ER full time, like I'm, internal medicine, they're like my family, and I was sounding the alarm because I was worried for them because I knew that they need the proper PPE. One, two, the way they were cohorting these patients, and I was realizing that you cannot expect these, healthcare workers to be put in that situation. So, and I didn't want them to get infected. And, Caius, who was my friend and coworker, and, I knew him for many years, his tragic passing, he was a nurse manager. He was a telemetry nurse in our hospital. Great guy, amazing spirit, did everything he can. Then he graduated, he became a nursing manager. So during the day, and he was, always working hard. And I saw him, I do nights, but he was extending his hours to help. And that's the kind of person he was. And he would, selfless, right? Like nurses are amazing, staffing is amazing there. Like we put so much on the line. So that was tough, but it also got, I know in his passing that he was a martyr of some sort. He was helping people realize nurses were put in, or our frontline staff were putting into such a dangerous situation. But each person that we help and save, and see that here comes the sun, like it helps, right? And people staying home and being disciplined enough, and we get a clap here at 7 p.m. every day or every night, which is huge. That I think people are now appreciating just us, and even fire department comes out, police, but we all appreciate them. We all, I think it's a camaraderie, it's a family, right? It's more than just workers. It's like we know what we're doing, right? It is a war, right? They put the analysis, or I'm sorry, the analogy to a war, and the band of brothers, band of sisters, whatever you want to call it. So I think it feels good. We're part of a team together, and we're trying to help people. I mean, that's the goal, right? Like we've always been doing that. So that's helpful.
Yeah, that is true. And also at the same time, whenever you're going home, whenever I'm talking to my nurses and all, we don't know what we are taking home. Right. I mean, that's the fear. You always have that in the back of your mind.
Right. Well, my friends all do that too. My other friend, he's an ER doctor. He just had a baby early February, and I told him and warned him, and he, I think, unfortunately got it, and then he recovered. But he's been staying away from his wife and newborn. He's been staying at the Four Seasons Hotel. Actually, each day they don't go. They stay separate. They don't. There's a lot of people who've got either hotels or thing, and they're making that sacrifice where you won't see the family because you don't want to take a chance. But the people who can't make that sacrifice, who can't, unfortunately they go home. I know my friends go to the garage. They have a strict protocol. Put the clothes in there. They wash. They go straight to the shower. Take this hot shower. They put the clothes in the wash. I mean, like there's a strict protocol they run, and you have to do what you have to do. You don't want to take that chance, and you try to minimize the risk as much as possible. So it's a tough thing, but you have to do what you have to do, right? Yeah. This is our war. They said the greatest generation. They said the best thing was that, people were complaining. It's like, your grandparents and parents had to go leave the country to go to fight a war that they didn't, they were 17, 18 years old, right? In World War I, World War II, all these big wars. We're asking you to just stay home and sit on the couch, primarily.
That's
like,
right.
I mean, I hope you can do that while we can help us do what we need to do. So
that's right. Focus on what you can do, what the difference you can make.
Right.
And what you have at hand, that's all we can do, what we can control.
What JFK said in his speech: ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country.
That's true. Yeah. We all be reminded of that.
I think that's, we need posters like that.
Yeah. Can you give our audience one advice that they can take away from you?
One advice. I mean, I think as we've been discussing the thing, obviously, just educate yourself, inform yourself, get the word out, call your local DOH. If there are things that are not happening right, like the power of the voice of the citizens together can enact change. I started petitions to get Governor Cuomo to use, Javits as a COVID-only facility, and then it happened. And I don't know if it was for me, but like enough people get informed, and with internet and social media, we're so interconnected, we can use that for good. And so I think my latest thing I've been telling you is that we need COVID-only facilities, and that's the key to mitigating the spread. I think that's the miss that we're having, besides just the shelter in place, social distancing. What do we do with people that get discharged from the hospital, or we need to send them somewhere where they can be quarantined, monitored to lessen the spread? I think we're missing that, and understanding that the incubation period is up to almost 3 months in certain cases. So we need to realize that's the lag time, that you can get that the symptoms may not show, and that's a problem. You could be spreading it. So minimizing social contact is key. It's hard, but that's the key in this. And it's a sacrifice, like we're making World War I, World War II. The sacrifice we have to do is sit on our couch and stream Netflix or watch Disney Plus. I know it's hard. I mean, it's so crazy. Honestly, if I didn't have to work in the hospital, and I'm fortunate enough where I'm financially secure in that sense, I'd be learning languages. I'd be playing piano. I'd be playing guitar. I'd be reaching out to people that I haven't talked to in a long time, doing things, self-improvement, and reset. I think we really value what we can, really understand what's valuable in life. And I think Marie Kondo says to get rid of clutter in your room, right? I'd be cleaning my room, get rid of things. Material things don't really matter, right? MasterCard said it, right? You can put a price to everything, but what really is valuable is the intangible things in life. They're priceless. So, and your family and friends, those are so important. So.
Wow. That's a great advice. Material things don't matter. That's wonderful to hear.
When your life is on the line and you're
That's
staring,
right.
something like that. So I hope people can take that away from everything.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
And if people want to contact you, is there any way they can reach you?
I try. I'm on Instagram. I'm like Doc Pill, DOCPILL. So that's my alter ego. And I actually had done an interview from somebody else, and they put my hospital, and somebody from New Zealand contacted me via email. So, I'm at my hospital, they might have my name. They can just Google me, I guess, and just see that. But I think on my Instagram is the best, or on Facebook. But again, I'm using it. I'm usually not a person that's asking for followers. I like to just learn things. I think they can contact me in that way. I think it's Doc Pill, so DOCPILL.
Okay, we'll put the links for people to reach you if they do need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there is anything that they want to ask you,
please.
So that might help them.
The more you know, the better. That's the key.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for your time. I very much appreciate you giving us wonderful advice. Thank you.
I appreciate what you're doing too. You're doing a great thing in service for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pilly.